Dr. Helen Sharp completes the colonoscopy on her own mother. The monitor reveals the reality. Multiple malignant polyps have metastasized. The cancer is terminal. Helen delivers the diagnosis with clinical detachment, but the facts remain heavy. There is no surgical option. Her mother listens, then refuses the offer of experimental clinical trials. She chooses to stop fighting the disease and start reclaiming her identity. In the quiet of the hospital room, the mother reveals a secret. Long ago in Accra, she dreamed of becoming a professional dancer. Her grandmother had suppressed the ambition, claiming dance was only for praising God. The mother stands, defying her physical decline. She initiates the Kapan logo, a traditional Ghanaian dance defined by its intense, rebellious rhythm. They move together, stomping their feet on the hospital floor and clapping in synchronized bursts. The pace is frantic. They are dancing against the ticking clock of a terminal sentence. The machines in the room continue their steady hum as the two women sweat and breathe heavily. The mother eventually stops. She reaches out and cups Helen's face. She confesses that Helen has always been her greatest joy and her deepest pain. The cold, rigid barrier between them dissolves. They are no longer a doctor and a dying patient. They are a mother and daughter, finally speaking the same language. In the shadow of death, they find a final, rhythmic peace. The dance ends, leaving only the truth of their reconciliation.
Surgeon Reynolds enters a dim basement to find his estranged father, Horace. Their reunion is interrupted by a hurricane-induced structural collapse. A neighbor is pinned under a massive metal pipe, her breathing shallow. Reynolds realizes they are trapped with zero medical supplies. He must improvise or let her die. The neighbor's ribs are shattered, threatening to pierce her internal organs. Reynolds commands Horace to fetch a pair of needle-nose pliers from a nearby workbench. Without a proper needle driver, Reynolds uses the pliers to grip and reset the jagged bone fragments. The metal grinds against bone as they work under a single flickering light. Suddenly, the neighbor's face turns blue and her chest stops moving. It is a tension pneumothorax. Trapped air is crushing her lungs and heart. Reynolds has seconds before her heart stops. He grabs a ballpoint pen and disassembles it, throwing away the ink tube and spray. He uses the hollow plastic barrel as the makeshift chest tube with a forceful strike. He drives the pen casing through her skin and into the pleural space. A sharp hiss of escaping air fills the silent basement. The pressure equalizes. The neighbor gasps, her lungs finally expanding. Reynolds and his father stand over the stable patient, their hands covered in blood. In a basement filled with construction debris, a top-tier surgeon has used a toolbox and a pen to defeat death. The hurricane strikes the hospital. Every department head refuses to lead the response team. Leaving the facility without a commander, Iggy steps forward and seizes the emergency binder. He initiates a massive evacuation, strictly following the manual's disaster protocols. As the pressure mounts, he detects a lethal concentration of gas leaking into the main stairwell. He abandons the binder's rigid instructions and physically forces the crowd to move to safety. The danger escalates as floodwater pours into the basement, threatening to turn the hospital floors into a massive electrical circuit. Iggy locates the backup generator, the hospital's energy heart. Despite the risk to patients on ventilators, he manually triggers the shutdown. He severs the emergency power, stopping the current seconds before it reaches the rising water. The building falls into total darkness, but the immediate threat of electrocution ends. In the quiet of the aftermath, Iggy faces his partner, Martin. He realizes that his chronic self-doubt is not a personal flaw, but a result of Martin's constant psychological suppression. He identifies Martin as the specific voice in his head that told him he would fail. Iggy refuses to return to his old subservience. He stands among the wreckage and tells Martin to move out of their home immediately. He chooses the clarity of the disaster over the suffocating nature of the relationship. The transition is absolute. The weak supervisor is gone, replaced by a man who no longer requires permission to lead. The co-pilot lies on the operating table, his blood refusing to clot. Dr. Bloom leans in and catches a sharp chemical scent. She identifies the smell as ethylene glycol, the antifreeze used in the plane's cooling and de-icing systems. During the crash, a ruptured hose sprayed the toxic fluid directly into the man's open abdominal wound. The chemical has entered his bloodstream, acting as a poison that prevents his blood from thickening. His liver enzymes spike to 3 times the normal limit as the organ begins to fail. The medical team is no longer just treating a trauma, they are fighting a chemical invasion. Dr. Cassian takes over the procedure. He performs a Zorro incision, cutting wide across the entire abdomen to expose the internal organs. He discovers a severe chemical burn on the bile duct. The antifreeze has caused the duct to scar shut, forcing bile to back up into the liver and kill the surrounding tissue. With the patient's blood pressure dropping, Cassian begins an immediate liver resection. He removes the damaged tissue and reconstructs the bile duct. Under extreme pressure, he identifies the specific points where the chemical damage prevented clotting and seals them one by one. The team administers a targeted antidote to neutralize the glycol. The bleeding finally slows and then stops. Through aggressive surgical intervention and precise chemical identification, the doctors stabilize the co-pilot, pulling the crash's survivor back from the edge of systemic collapse. Dr. Kapoor is trapped on a ventilator. He cannot wake up because New Amsterdam has run out of propofol. The shortage is absolute. Factories are empty, and the national stockpile is depleted. Max Goodwin walks the halls of a paralyzed ICU, facing a medical system that has officially broken down. Max reaches out to the city's top hospitals, but the answers are identical. University Hospital is losing $40 million a month and laying off staff. They have nothing to give. Baptist Hospital is so desperate they are buying ventilator tubing from Home Depot. The traditional supply chain has collapsed, leaving doctors to scavenge for basic gear. During a call with Memorial Hospital, Max identifies a fatal flaw in the distribution logic. Memorial is being flooded with acyclovir, a herpes medication that they do not need for their specific patient demographic. The central warehouse is pushing supplies based on rigid algorithms rather than real-time demand, creating massive surpluses in some facilities and deadly deficits in others. Max stops begging for help and starts bartering. He organizes a multi-way conference call, turning the crisis into a high-stakes resource exchange. He facilitates the transfer of Memorial's excess acyclovir to University. In return, University releases the ventilator tubing Baptist requires. Baptist, now equipped with the necessary hardware, agrees to hand over a surplus stash of propofol discovered in their storage. This underground network bypasses the failing bureaucracy. By the end of the shift, the propofol arrives. Max watches as the drug is administered, finally allowing Dr. Kapoor to breathe on his own. He has turned competing institutions into a functional collective. When the system failed to provide, Max Goodwin used raw logic to keep his patients alive. The NTSB investigation team enters the hospital with a single target, Captain Dane. They possess his confidential medical files and present a grim theory. They suspect Dane suffered a manic episode triggered by bipolar disorder. To them, the crash into the Hudson River was not an accident, but a calculated suicide attempt. Psychiatrist Iggy Frome sits across from the captain, pushing for the truth. Under the weight of the interrogation, Dane's resolve breaks. He admits to his bipolar diagnosis and the years he spent hiding his medication. This confession plunges Dane into a spiral of self-doubt. He begins to question his own memory, fearing he might truly be a mass murderer. However, director Max Goodwin identifies two critical anomalies that contradict the suicide narrative. He notes that the plane dumped its fuel seconds before the impact. Furthermore, Dane steered the aircraft toward the widest, safest stretch of the river, far from the populated streets of Manhattan. Max realizes these are the actions of a man trying to save lives, not end them. The final proof emerges from the black box. The cockpit voice recording reveals a mechanical nightmare. The airspeed indicator had failed, providing false data that mirrored the tragic Hawaii 660 disaster. The instruments told Dane he was